It all started with a simple favor. "Thanks for helping me out, Jimmy," I said, pushing the mower into place in my parents' garage. "No problem, bro. Besides, I promised Mom I'd be here. She was afraid Dad would try to mow the lawn with one hand." "She's probably right. You know how stubborn he is," Jimmy smirked. "Tough old goat, that one." Well, that was quick work. "How about we celebrate with a milkshake at DQ?" We walked inside to let Mom know we were done. Dad was napping on the couch, his injured arm resting on a pillow. He had taken a fall at work and broken his left arm. It seemed to be healing fine, but Mom didn't want him overdoing it. "Thanks for coming, boys. I knew that stubborn man would try to do it himself. Too proud to ask for help," she said, shaking her head. "Glad to help, Mom. With Jimmy's help, it was a breeze." "You boys staying for dinner?" she asked. Jimmy spoke up first. "I don't know about John, but I've got a date tonight. We're trying that new restaurant on Broad Street. I've got a darts match at the pub, planning to win myself some free pizza," I said, grinning. We headed to Dairy Queen, where the parking lot was packed. Our local DQ didn't have a drive-thru, so we had to line up at the window. While joking about Jimmy's date, my attention drifted. A girl ahead of us caught my eye, tight shorts, cropped t-shirt, long legs. She turned slightly, and my brother noticed my stare. Amused, he glanced over too. "Caught something interesting," he teased. The girl must have felt our eyes on her because she glanced back, smirking. "Do I pass the test?" I stammered. "Oh, sorry. Yes, of course." Her smirk widened. "Glad you approve. Now, if you boys will excuse me." She moved past us, and despite my best effort, my gaze followed her. Jimmy nudged me with an elbow. "Dude, you're staring." We got our shakes and walked to the car when Jimmy lifted his chin toward a bright red Miata. The girl was sitting in the passenger seat, licking her cone and chatting with another girl behind the wheel. As we approached, I nodded at the car. "Nice ride." The passenger smiled. "Oh, so you check out cars too?" Her friend laughed. "Careful, sis, he's a smooth one." "Not too smooth," she countered. I caught him staring at my ass. We all laughed, and I extended my hand. "John Rollins, this is my brother, Jim." She switched her cone to the other hand and shook mine. "Amy Matthews, and this is my sister, Jill." We chatted casually while finishing our ice cream. As they got ready to leave, I found the nerve to ask, "Amy, can I get your number? Maybe call you sometime?" She smirked again. "Hand me your phone." I passed it over, and she punched in her number. My phone buzzed in her hand before she gave it back. "Now we have each other's number." They waved as they drove off. I saved her contact and turned to Jimmy. "Dude, she's gorgeous. And her sister's just as cute. Think she's single. When you call Amy, ask about Jill for me." Funny thing, I remember that day like it was yesterday, but it was 13 years ago. Sure enough, I called Amy. We dated, got serious, got married. A couple of years later, Jimmy married Jill. We started our own electrical business, with Amy, managing the office while Jill worked as a nurse. Jimmy and Jill had 2 daughters, and after a tough journey, Amy and I finally had a son, Brian. He was 8 now, bright, full of energy, and looked just like me. At least I thought he did. Looked down at the DNA results in my hand. Brian had recently taken one of those ancestry tests, inspired by his cousins who had done the same. Due to some mix-up, his results had been delayed, but when they came back, they showed something unexpected. Brian was listed as Amy's son, but not mine. Jimmy was his father. I read the report again, willing the words to change, but they didn't. The TI reread the report, making sure I hadn't misheard. It was clear I was related to Brian, but not as his biological father. Leaning back in my chair, I felt my stomach drop. My brother? No way. Amy would never cheat. On me. Just then, the garage door opened. Amy and Brian were home. I stuffed the report back into the envelope and hid it in my dresser. Brian grabbed some snacks and rushed to his room, barely noticing me. Amy placed her purse on the table and froze when she saw me. "John, you're home early. Weren't you at Miller's?" He canceled, so I came back. That a problem? My tone was sharp, and she caught on immediately. "Of course not. John, what's wrong? Come upstairs now." She followed, alarmed. In our bedroom, I handed her the report. Explain this. Amy frowned. John, you helped him order this. I thought it was pointless, but you insisted. What's the problem? Open it, I snapped. She did, gasping loudly. No, this has to be a mistake. It says Jim is his father. How long have you been sleeping with my brother? Amy recoiled. What? Are you insane? Jim is my brother-in-law. DNA doesn't lie, Amy. Tears filled her eyes. John, I swear, I never cheated on you, ever. Doubt crept in. Could it really be a mistake? I grabbed my phone and dialed Jim. Hey, have you ever slept with my wife? Laughter. Sure, bro, we just finished, sending her back soon. More laughter. I'm serious, Jim. When was the last time? John, what the hell? Are you on something? DNA doesn't lie. A pause. Oh my God. Tell me you didn't just accuse Amy of cheating. Silence. Jesus, you did, you idiot. I'm coming over. I tossed the phone aside. Amy sobbed. John, please, the test is wrong. Before I could respond, Jim's car screeched to a halt. He stormed in, rage in his eyes. You hurt her, you bastard. Jim, no, he didn't touch me. Amy shoved the report at him. He read it, staggered, and collapsed onto the couch. This can't be right. I would never. John, you have to believe me. Looking at them both, I saw it. Genuine shock. Shame washed over me. I believe you, I admitted. I panicked. Jim shook his head. Get another test. When it proves... You wrong. Demand your money back from those idiots. Weeks later, a second test arrived. I stuffed it into my pocket, heading to Jim's house for dinner. When I arrived, Amy and Jill were in the kitchen laughing over wine. Jim was by the grill. Nice steaks, I said, handing him a beer. Smith's finest, he grinned. Hope you're hungry. I nodded, heart pounding. I had the results, and this time, I was ready for the truth. Ruth was right there in black and white. I skipped lunch to finish mowing the lawn on time. Later, we chatted as Jim grilled steaks and vegetables. My sisters joined us, and everyone enjoyed the meal. As I helped clear the dishes, Jim asked what was in my pocket. It took me a moment to recall that I had slipped my lab report into my back pocket. I pulled it out. It's a new lab report. The guy delivered it just as I was leaving, I said. Amy and Jill returned to the deck and Jim turned to them. John has something to share, he announced. We sat at the table and I handed the envelope to Amy. What's this? Jill asked. The results of the family DNA test. Brian insisted we order one. He thought yours was interesting and begged me to get one for us. But you said it wasn't necessary, Jill snapped. Our test already showed the Rollins family tree. You said it would be a waste of money. Why did you order it? Her irritation was evident. Jill, relax. It wasn't expensive, Amy reassured her. Open it, honey. I unfolded the report and handed it to Amy. Jim leaned in to read over her shoulder. What the hell? They both blurted out in unison. Amy shook the papers. Is this some kind of joke? Where's the real report? I snatched. The paper's back. There it was, John Rollins' relative. James Rollins' father. My head spun. Oh my God, I murmured, looking at Amy. It's true, I'm not his father. Shock rippled through the group. Jim's mouth hung open, his face a mask of disbelief. Jill's eyes welled with tears, and she began sobbing. She slowly met my gaze. Please, John, forgive me. She's my sister. I love her. I had to do it. She was suffering. I couldn't let her suffer anymore. What are you talking about? Jim yelled, his frustration mounting. What have you done? Amy turned to Jill, her voice a whisper. Jill, what do you mean? Tell me what you did. How is this possible? Jill took a deep breath, glancing at each of us before speaking. At the clinic, when you two were struggling to conceive after 3 failed attempts, you were ready to give up. I begged you to try one last time. You hesitated because each failure crushed Amy. You didn't want to see her go through it again. But I saw how much she wanted a baby. I couldn't watch her suffer any longer. She turned to Jim. Remember when you agreed to the vasectomy? I told you we needed a sample beforehand to make sure it was necessary. That was a lie. I needed it. For Amy. She turned to her sister. I scheduled you and John for the same day. Jim arrived an hour earlier. I switched the samples. I knew that if you got pregnant, it would likely be from Jim, but there was still a chance it could be John's. When we found out you were expecting, you were both so happy. I convinced myself that a miracle had happened and that Brian was John's. He looked just like him, and I let myself believe it. Their DNA is so similar that I thought it wouldn't matter. Amy shook her head in disbelief. Jill, how could you? You should have talked to me. We could have discussed it, but instead, you just did this. My God, I had a baby with your husband. Jim turned to me, gripping my shoulders. John, I swear I had no idea. If you had come to me and asked, I don't even know what I would have said. Amy collapsed into my arms, sobbing. John, what are we going to tell Brian? You're his father, the only one he's ever known. How is this happening? I lifted her gently. We need time. I'll call you tomorrow, I said, leading Amy toward the door. Jill sobbed uncontrollably. I never meant to hurt anyone. When we got home, I carried Amy to bed. She clung to me as we wept ourselves to sleep. But in the morning, when I reached for her, she was gone. I found her curled up in Brian's bed, hugging his pillow. How long had she been there? I went downstairs, made coffee, and sat at the table, my head in my hands. I was angry at Jill for putting us in this position, but without her, Brian wouldn't exist. Still, she had robbed us of the choice. What if we had wanted Jim to help us? What if Amy wouldn't have agreed? And Jim? He had unknowingly given up his only son. How would he handle this? Amy entered the kitchen, silent but seeking comfort. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tightly. As the coffee warmed in the microwave, we stood together, lost in thought. Finally, we sat down, sipping in silence. She looked up at me. What do we do now? I met her tearful gaze. What do you think is the right thing? I need to know how you feel. She exhaled, steeling herself. What matters is that I am Brian's mother. You are my husband, and Brian has only ever known you as his father. We are a family, and I don't want that to change. I nodded. It's a mess, but I love Brian just as much today as I did before. He is, and always will be, my son. And you. I love you more than anything. I don't want our life to change. Amy smiled weakly, squeezing my hand. Okay, but what about Jill and Jim? We need to talk to them. Jim must be furious. Jill gave away his only son. I can't imagine how he's dealing with that. And Jill, I hate her for deceiving us, but I love her for the sacrifice she made. She did it out of love, but it hurt us all deeply. Amy nodded. Exactly. What she did was awful, but Brian was the result. And he's everything. We sat in silence, knowing the hardest conversations were still ahead. We needed to contact them, first thing in the morning, and find a way to resolve this before the kids returned home. When Jill and Jimmy arrived an hour later, they looked exhausted, as though they hadn't slept at all. I poured more coffee, and we gathered in the family room. We're a family, I started. We love each other, and we all love the kids. We need to figure out the best way forward for everyone. Amy and I want to hear from you, Jimmy. What do you think should happen next? Jimmy clenched his jaw, frustration evident. I'm so damn angry at Jill right now. Look at this mess. He turned to her, his expression softening slightly as he took in her tear-streaked face. Honestly, I have no idea what to do. Brian is my son, but you're the one who's raised him. What am I supposed to do with that? Part of me is thrilled to have a son, but I could never take him away from you. He'd resent me forever if I tried. Legally, in Ohio, the law considers you his father since he was born during your marriage, and your name is on his birth certificate. The state doesn't factor in DNA in cases like this, at least from what I've read online. Jimmy sighed deeply. Look, we're family. Are you saying we should get lawyers involved? No way, I replied firmly. This is complicated. But we need to handle it ourselves. I love you, you're my brother, and I don't want to hurt you. But he is my son, and I think he deserves to know the truth. Absolutely not. Amy's voice cut through the air. Brian is our son, And if we tell him that John isn't his biological father, it will break his heart. He's too young to comprehend any of this. As far as he knows, John is his father, and that's how it needs to stay. I raised my hands to calm her. Amy, I understand, but I agree with Jim. Brian should know the truth. Amy exhaled sharply, her voice low but firm. He needs to know only when he's mature enough to handle it. I turned back to Jim. Is that what you meant? God, yes, he said. Amy, I'm sorry. I would never want to hurt him now. But someday he deserves to know everything. Not yet, but when we all agree the time is right. Amy studied me before giving a slow nod. Fine, but not any time soon. He's only 8. Jimmy nodded. 17 or 18, something like that. Okay, let's make a pact. We won't say anything until Brian turns 17. Then we'll decide together when and how to tell him. I met my brother's gaze. Jimmy, can you live with that? He hesitated, then exhaled. I hate it, but if it's what's best for him, I'll do it. I'll always put him first. I pulled him into a hug. I knew you would, because you love him just as much as I do. Turning to Jill, I noticed she had been silent the whole time. Jill, you haven't said much. What are your thoughts? She began sobbing again. Amy, after a moment's hesitation, went to her and embraced her. Jill, you're my sister, and I love you. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive what you did to my family, but without you, my beautiful boy wouldn't exist. So I can't hate you for that. I hope you'll always be Brian's favorite aunt. She squeezed Jill's shoulders and kissed the top of her head. Jimmy, still visibly upset, turned away before releasing a long sigh. She hurt us all. She could have told us what she was planning, but instead she acted alone and left us to deal with the consequences. Jim, I said gently. It's clear her decision came from a place of love for her sister. She didn't want to risk any of us stopping her. She had one opportunity, and she took it. It was wrong. It hurt all of us. But she isn't a bad person. She was desperate to help Amy, and in the end, we have Brian because of it. I can't hate her for that. Jimmy stared at the floor for a long moment before taking a deep breath. Then, without another word, he walked over to Jill, wrapping his arms around her as she sobbed against his chest. He leaned down and whispered into her ear, "Stop crying and kiss me, you crazy woman." Over time, life settled into a new normal. I made sure to include Jimmy in Brian's life as much as possible. As Brian grew older, he started resembling Jimmy more, but no one found it odd. Family resemblances happen all the time. When Brian was close to turning 18, we finally sat him down and told him the truth about his origins. At first, he thought we were joking, but when reality set in, he took it surprisingly well. He turned to Jill, his expression unreadable, before finally speaking. "Thank you for making my life possible." Jill, overwhelmed, burst into tears. Brian then looked at the rest of us. "Please don't tell my cousins. I just want things to stay the way they are." Jimmy looked a little hurt by this, but he nodded in agreement. Life is never simple, but love has a way of helping us through even the most difficult times.